Welcome to the Health Coach Nation podcast. My name is Hailey Rowe, and I'm a sales and marketing coach and LinkedIn lead generation service provider. I work with health, life, and mindset coaches and online service-based business owners to help them get more sales, shift their time to the client-generating activities instead of just the busy work, and overcome that social media overwhelm. Let's get into the show. If you're ready to take on your next paying clients, I have good news. My free 4 Basics of Client Attraction and How to Stand Out class is live at haileyrowe.com/client-attraction. In the class, you're going to learn the top 2 traits I recommend for most coaches and entrepreneurs if they really want to turn this into a career. You're going to learn how you can build demand for your services and stop getting crickets on your posts. You're going to learn the sales roadmap I used to improve my sales conversion rate and help my clients do the same. And you're going to learn so much more. So go to haileyrowe.com/client-attraction and get your copy of the class today. To write scroll-stopping headlines, how you can create more posts that drive action from your audience. And Linda, why don't you share how you got into the work you do and what you do?
Well, it's kind of a long story, so I'll try to make it short. I'm one of those serial entrepreneurs that's always had my own business, and I've kind of gone from one thing to another, but the 2 things that have remained constant for me are fitness and writing, in one incarnation or another. So I began my writing career when I was working as a personal trainer, and I was getting a free magazine every week it was just thrown on my driveway, and it had a fitness column. And I thought, I'm working with people one-on-one in their homes. Why not pitch this editor an idea about how to set up a home gym? Because people always ask me that question. How much room do I need for a treadmill, et cetera? And so I pitched him the idea. He gave the green light. He loved it. To make a long story short, I ended up he called me after I wrote the column. He said, I love this. Would you like to write some more for me? And so I said, of course. And I ended up gradually phasing out my personal training clients because I was sort of burned out. I've been doing it for close to 15 years at that point. And I decided to really go into the writing. So I ended up writing for not just him, but all kinds. I branched out into national publications. I had a regular gig with MSN Health for a couple of years. I was doing 4 of those slideshows a month for them. I was writing for Huffington Post. I've been in Time Magazine and all of it. And then all of a sudden it all kind of collapsed, around 2014. All print publication was just going away, one by one. They're shutting their doors. So I decided, all right, what am I going to do? I started a course, an online fitness course. And I did a lot of things wrong. I was running it like a hobby instead of a business. And I see that now, but at the time I didn't. So I made a lot of mistakes and I couldn't get it working like I wanted to. So I said, let me go back to writing. Now I had all this fitness background. So I thought, let me go into copywriting. And I ended up meeting the marketers of Bowflex at a fitness conference. And they said, we're looking for a writer to write our catalog that goes out. And we want somebody who kind of has that snarky attitude. And at this point in our interactions, he knew that I had a good sense of humor. And he said, would you want to do that? I said, of course. So I started writing for them and made a lot of mistakes along the way, thinking that copywriting was the same as content writing, which it isn't. And but that's how I got started. And so I worked with some copywriting coaches, really high-level ones, took some great courses, and ended up just really going 100% into the really health, fitness, wellness copywriting is really my niche right now, or niche.
Amazing. I love it. Okay. And what a fun story. I would love to hear the difference between copywriting and content writing for those who don't know.
It's funny because it's a question I get a lot, and I didn't realize it was such a difference till I started doing it. So content writing, just in a nutshell, and there's a lot of overlap. Content writing is writing that's to entertain or inform. So example, all the magazine articles I was writing, that's considered content. Copywriting, I see it as starting with the end in mind. You want people to take some kind of action. You're writing the copy for a purpose. It involves more decision-making psychology. You have to know you really have to know your audience. When you're writing, say I'm writing an article for a magazine, a women's magazine, on some kind of health-related topic, one that was really successful, I wrote for health. It was 14 reasons why you're tired all the time. That was their best viewed article for I don't know how long, because everyone wanted to know. That wasn't targeting anyone in specific, like as far as, somebody who's going to read that and say, oh, this is just for me. I mean, if you're having problems, staying awake during the day, yeah, it was. But if I were to take that idea and make it into copy, for instance, it would be more targeted. Like, who am I talking to? Am I talking to women? Am I talking to men? What's their age group? What are their biggest complaints about being tired? And I would dive into all of that way more than I did in the content piece. And then it would have a call to action at the end, which would, for the copy piece, either sign up here for more information, join our live webinar, or sign up for a trial, whatever it is that the offer is. Where the content piece would just be kind of eye-opening for people. It may have a call to action at the end, like if you're having trouble sleeping, I don't know, give some advice, but it's kind of rare. Usually it's just the information.
Got it. Very helpful. So when you say write influential posts and have good headlines, tell me more about how do you define influence and, a post that is influential compared to just one that's meh, not very memorable.
I think the biggest difference is influential posts will have an emotion in it. Like if you write something like, say you're using AI, which unfortunately a lot of people are just cut and pasting AI for their copy, it's very dry and it's typically just the facts. Maybe it has statistics, where if you are really looking at getting your post out there and having people read it, you want to tap into what emotion they're feeling that makes them take action. So it could be you start with a story. I just posted on LinkedIn today about that, how AI doesn't have a story. So you can, in fact, the story I told in my post today was what I just talked about, how I created a 6-figure business, and this is how I started, and the ups and downs of the whole, publishing world and all of that. So you want to have it be addressing what their specific challenge is. So this requires talking to them. You really need to know, like in the fitness world. So my main audience was women over 50. And when I talked to them, I realized that it wasn't so much about getting flat abs, which would be a priority maybe in your 30s, 20s and 30s, but it was more about, I'm over 50. I want to play with my grandchildren. I can't get up off the floor. It was more functional. So it's like, okay, so I changed the copy depending on, what audience I was speaking to. So you need to know what is really challenging them and get that emotion in there, but then also follow it up with, I get it. Here's how I can help. So you kind of bring the challenge out, you agitate it. It's the old pain, agitation, solution formula that you probably heard about. But you don't want to agitate it to the point where it's insulting, especially with fitness and health. It's really easy to overstep that line. You have to be careful.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, well, you don't want to make assumptions, that, and you don't want to have a call to action on a post about how someone's so insecure and they feel so embarrassed, because they're not going to want to, if it's like, comment on this post, your biggest insecurity or something, like, you don't want to, they're not going to out themselves on your post, right?
Right.
So there's that kind of like delicate line. But I think one thing that I see a lot of coaches and service providers struggle with when it comes to this concept of adding a call to action is like, what do I say? How do I make it powerful? Like, I'm saying comment, but no one's commenting, or I'm saying reaching out, but no one's reaching out. And so they feel like, and should it be in every post? And is it too salesy? So what kind of things could you tell us about your calls to action and how to transition our post into that and that kind of thing?
Well, calls to action, a lot of times what I tell my clients or what I do for them is I'm thinking of like buttons, like when you want to have somebody click something specifically, it should complete the sentence like, I want to, and then address whatever it is they want to do. If it's a button on a website, which is literally the conversion point, you want to make sure that they are clear on what they're going to get when they click that button, because it's like opening a door. And if that door opens to a sales page that they're not ready for, they're going to just jump off. So you have to know where your audience is coming from. And then you create the call to action that is in line with where you just led them to. So it's either like kind of laughing at myself because I had one copywriting coach who said, never use the word learn, which I know, like if you're doing a Facebook ad, that's one of the defaults for the button. But learn sounds like work. So I never use that. It would be something like, and they actually call it a call to value. Like, what is it that you can offer that you can put in there that's for more information sort of thing? And also for calls to action, try different ones, even if they lead to the same page. Try, especially if it's like a long form sales page. You might have 3 buttons that all lead to something the same, but it's a different CTA, and you can test it that way to see which one is working the best. But it should be just in line with what you've just done and not be unexpected, I think is a word I'm looking for. So it's like you've just gone through reading this page or this ad, and it's like, okay, I want to take the next step. What would that be? And that's what that call to action should take you to.
Nice. Okay. And with the headlines of our posts, so we the end, you usually have your call to action, the middle, you have your evoking emotion, giving value, all that. What about headlines? What do we need to, what are do's and don'ts? What makes up a good headline?
Headlines are so tough because if people the statistic is 80% of people don't get past your headline. So for one, I'd say spend most of your time figuring out what you're going to put on your headline. There's a free app or online app called Headline Analyzer. And I run a lot of my headlines through that. It seems to be pretty accurate. So it will tell you the percentage, like it says, if you're a professional copywriter, you should have a 30 to 40% emotional, I forget how they word it, but it's like the emotional impact of the headline. And a lot of times, all you have to do is add something that will bring it there. So the things that really work well are adding a number. 10 ways to, 4 steps to. Those are usually very catchy. Like people love that. If it's, because then they see it as like, okay, I'm just going to have 4 points. I don't have to read through a whole bunch of stuff. Anything that addresses like the curiosity factor. Like I always use the example BuzzFeed, those headlines, I don't know who writes them, but they're so hard to come up against. You mean I've been eating an apple wrong this whole time? I need to find out how. So it's like this curiosity thing that maybe goes against what they believe. So this is, if everyone says this, you put up something that's contrary, they're going to want to know why you feel that way. And a lot of times that would be helpful. I say to write about 20, 25 headlines first and really just brainstorm and go through. You can use AI, but it tends to just give you the same thing that you hear everywhere. It could be a good place to start, though. If you want to say, I do this with podcasts because I have my own podcast and I have like a process I use. Well, I will throw the headlines into chat, or I'll ask it to come up with something better. And I never use it the way it puts it together, but I'll sometimes choose a word like, okay, that's a good way to do it. But a lot of it's just testing. But it's, making it simple, impactful, curiosity driven is probably the most impactful or effective way. Something that makes people want to read more. And this goes for social media posts. It goes for, ads. That's probably the best advice I can give for that. And again, like using numbers, the curiosity gap, or even urgency, but you don't want to overdo that. Like just if it's a product that, like if I'm going through my emails and it's a product I use all the time and they're saying, 48-hour sale, I'm clicking on it because I want to know what it is and how much, what the special is.
I love it.
So the testing. Yeah.
Yeah. Driving curiosity, having those numbers in there, making it tangible. And one of the other things that I think people struggle with content is they feel like, okay, yeah, I'll put it in AI or whatever. But if I'm not going to use that because it's generic, which I completely agree, it takes me forever to write a post. So any tips for the perfectionists out there, just like feeling like content takes them so long, or they get a block and they don't have anything to say today or anything like that?
I mean, the way I do, and everyone has their own method. This is where if you really have like a writer's block and you just can't get any ideas, and that happens to me. I write blogs sometimes for my clients, and I will use AI for ideas. So worst case scenario, use AI to get started, and it'll save you some time, and it'll help you maybe trigger an idea. And then what you want to do is you take that information and think about how you can weave something into it that's personal. Again, like the post I did today, it's like I wanted to make a point about, the whole way that you can flip your business around without it being a disaster and what I went through. So add something personal to it. So maybe you take the stats from AI or the information, look up some of it on your own, of course, but then add something that's personal. Make it a conversational way to write too. So as if you were talking to somebody, because a lot of times I read not so much posts, but it's more like website copy where it's like, no one would ever say this, like no one gets up in the morning and says, whatever it is they have on there that just isn't what people talk about. Just make it you, I think, is the most important thing with social media, because right now it's the only thing that really differentiates us, because everyone, posting the same thing and using the same words. It's like you'll stand out if you just add your own experience to it. But I'd say start with AI to get some ideas. Mm-hmm. Look around. I use a site called, it's a platform, Redact AI for LinkedIn posts. And in fact, I just used it this morning. You can repurpose old posts through there. And it seems to be, it's the most accurate as far as getting voice down. Like I almost cut and paste. It's really accurate.
Okay. So that could be say that again. It's called
Redact, what? AI, REDACT.ai, or Taplio, TAPLIO. That's also connected to LinkedIn. Oh, cool. But even if it's not for LinkedIn, you can use it for other social media as well. Just cut and paste.
Cool. That's a great tip for a new tool. And one of the other things you just said is finding your voice or putting you into it. So some people struggle with finding their voice, or they feel like they have to change their voice to make it an intentional business post instead of like a casual thing. So any tips for someone finding their voice or pulling that out, or what that even means?
It's hard to, I would say just write like you speak, but it's not always easy if you're not used to doing that. Because I do see that. I'll be talking to somebody and I know the way they talk, then I see their post on a social media and it's like, that's not you. Where'd you get that from? It sounds very businesslike. And I think people do that because they feel like they have to do it. And now more than ever, it's so not true. You want to have personality in your posts. So when it's your voice, think about just how do you talk to somebody? If you meet somebody, out at the gym or in a bar, wherever you go, and if you're going to tell them about this, how would you tell them? You would not say things like could not. Usually it's couldn't. No, you're going to use contractions. You're going to speak like you're going to start sentences like I just did in the middle of another sentence. You can start with words like and because, which, by the way, Grammarly will flag you, which is why I usually turn off Grammarly, because it's all about, I had a big back and forth on LinkedIn about this a while ago because people were pushing back on it. But if you're writing a scholarly paper, sure, you want to make sure it's perfect and the English is perfect. But you just want to write like you're speaking, which is not the same as if you're writing for a client, by the way, because then you want to use their voice. And that takes research on your part to do that.
Right. And, I would never, the only other thing I think that's maybe an exception to the rule is like the headline. Like I would never just go up to someone at the gym and be like, hey, you want to know 4 ways you could, 4 ways you're eating an apple wrong and here's how to do it instead. Right. So I think there's like a little caveat there, but
yeah.
So, all right, great. This is awesome. Now, the other thing with, that you mentioned before was that you've made a lot of mistakes in your business and also, on this journey of copywriting and whatnot. So what are some of the mistakes maybe that you feel would help this audience not make the same mistakes or that we could learn from?
The number one thing, and this is the first lesson I learned the hard way, is that you need to speak to your audience. You need to get to know, especially if it's not like I'm in the fitness world. So I know because I was in it, I spoke to people. But even then, like the example I gave, I didn't know what were the big challenges for different age groups. If you just try to come up with a voice or copy in a vacuum with yourself without doing any kind of research, it's going to be a lot harder and you're probably not going to get it right. Like the mistake that I made, I was hired by, actually this company didn't hire me yet. We were going back and forth. This is way back when. And she said, what kind of copy would you do for this? And like today I would never do that for free, but at the time I was just getting started. And I wrote it, I'll never forget. She said, I could write this. First of all, people do think they could do copywriting, but when you do it right, and she probably is right for what I put out. I didn't know about the research that was involved, so that was a big thing. So you really want to talk to your target audience. What words are they using? What phrases are they using? What are their specific challenges? And you want to be specific in your copy too. So any place, like my biggest argument with ChatGPT is when it uses these fluffy words like best in class or anything related to that. You want to catch those phrases and words and ask yourself, okay, how can I further define this? So instead of saying something like in the fitness world, if you want to lose weight, or, it'd be more like describe what they're going through the day. Are you tired of wondering if you can get that zipper all the way up? Like, what is it because I've had people tell me things like that, or, in my case with the audience I had, when you get down on the floor with your grandchild, are you afraid you're going to be stuck there? Like, and you have to word it very carefully, of course, but you have to get specific so that they are reading this saying, this is exactly what I'm going through right now. Like, what can they relate to? So anything general, you want to really break down into a specific example that they can relate to. I think those are the biggest things.
Love that. Yes. So rather than saying like, get more confident, you might say, be so confident you can walk into any room without worrying that people are at your midsection or something. I don't know. Right. I don't know. But yeah. Okay. Yeah. So where can people connect with you, find you, all that good stuff?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, of course. I'm very active on there. I have a website, thecopyworks, WORX.com. I have a bunch of freebies on there, and I have a newsletter that comes out every Thursday that's free, and it's just all different exclusive tips. And I also have a podcast, B2B marketing and copywriting podcast. So any of those places, I'm all out there. So
great. Well, thank you so much for being here. And it was really fun to talk with you. I love the tips.
Thanks so much for listening to this podcast. And if it's really helpful for you, I'd really appreciate if you share it and or leave a written podcast review. This tells the podcast sites that our show is useful and it will be promoted to more people that way. Thanks again.